All right, here we go. Let's bring her in. Podcast number 432. It is the woman you saw first on Ben Flanick's season of The Bachelor. And now she got her own podcast called After Reality. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you've listened to it. She's also doing some work for some other podcasts, which we'll get into. It is Courtney Robertson. Hey, Courtney.
Hi. Hello, everybody. How's it going? How's it hanging?
Hey, so before we get into the whole podcast thing and other stuff we want to talk about, Grant's season
Mhm.
and other things that I have topics on the table, are the kids driving or riding around in their bikes in the kitchen right now? It's my
I hope
favorite thing to
not.
watch. It's my favorite thing to watch on your videos.
Well, Lola always wants to ride her bike in the kitchen. It actually drives Umberto crazy. And I'm like, whatever we got to do, just a couple
But,
more laps, sweetheart. Oh, and
but
they're
you got to pick
very,
your battles on something like that. Isn't that what you got to do? Just like, hey,
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We have like a kitchen where it's like we have this whole house and everybody ends up in one small area, like circling around the main part of the kitchen. So yeah, they are actually getting baths right now. And I am excited to talk with a friend. I stepped out into our detached, workspace. So H is dealing with the witching hour, which is very real. I've sent you pictures,
mm.
dinner, baths. Then we do movie time. I just bought Moana 2 for $30 on Apple TV. So there you go.
Did you go see it in the theater first, or
Yes.
Paloma can't? Oh, you
I
did see it in
took
the theater.
Paloma. She was talking the whole time. People were
Oh,
shushing us. I'm like, we're at like an 11 o'clock movie. Like, what do you expect?
yeah. Well, what was the other thing that I saw her? It wasn't her bike that she was on the other day. It
Oh,
was
she
something
had her
else.
little scooter, her razor.
Or a
And she's
razor.
like,
That's right.
flamingo. And she does this thing where she goes so fast and she lifts up one leg and she's like, flamingo. I'm like, oh my gosh.
What does she like better, the razor or the bike?
The razor, because she can go faster.
Oh,
Yeah, and but they know not to go into the street. They're like, "Can we go into the street?" And she is giving
hmm.
me a run for my money. She just recently had walking pneumonia, which I guess is going around, and so I'm just glad she's back to her chipper self, but
What's walking pneumonia? That means you can have pneumonia and still go about your day.
it's just makes you really sick. It's really dangerous for little kids, and apparently
Oh,
it's been going around and it's just like an upper respiratory infection. So she's back in the pink though. So we are back in action and man, it's like what they say, the days are long, but the years are short.
all right. I want to get to your podcast real quick to
Oh
talk about
yeah.
a couple of things. First off, number one,
First
your
order
after
of
reality
business.
guest this week was Jonathan Roan from Bachelorette or Golden Bachelorette, and he found out, I guess, over
Yeah.
the weekend that he was no longer in a relationship and he is a single man. You talked to
Mhm.
him. He was on your podcast on a Wednesday, and just tell everybody how that came about with Jonathan and just what you
Yeah,
think about Jonathan overall.
I watched obviously Joan's season of The Golden Bachelorette, and I had my favorites. I talked about it on my podcast after reality. I was like, Jonathan, there was just something about him, his smile. And
Yeah.
I follow like a lot of my favorites on any season. Like I followed Carolina, I've followed Juliana, I follow Grant. And so I've been like low key watching his stories. But I remember watching after the final rose and seeing Jonathan, and he announced that he had a girlfriend, and so did Mark Anderson, Kelsey's dad. And I was like, oh, like I was for me, like the next Golden Bachelor, I wanted it to be one of those two. I think now who's it going to be, right? At this point, when we were watching after the final rose, like, is it Charles L? I mean, from this group of men, like I love Jonathan's story. I loved his whole vibe. So I've been like low key messaging him. I even followed his girlfriend that he just went through the breakup with because I thought it would be super interesting to talk to her and be like, what's it like dating somebody in the public eye? So we've just fly by messaged each other here and there. And he reached out to me and, he told me about his breakup. And he's 62. He's never gone through a public breakup and he just wanted some friendly advice. And so we hopped on the phone. We ended up talking for an hour and I said I would love to have, if you're comfortable, I'd love for you to share your story on my podcast. So, yeah, I'm just like a big fan of his. There's something I just felt very drawn to him. And he's been through a lot. Like he was like having crippling anxiety and like I'm still getting messages, like, people think we're still together, and I've never had to publicly do a breakup. Like, I don't even know what to do. I think he mentioned that his ex didn't really want him to delete the pictures. So I just felt for him, like, as my dad found love later in life and navigating dating, and, he met her on Bumble. I just felt like I wanted to help a fellow Bachelor alum out. And I'm really glad I did, because we've created a great friendship. And I personally think he's a shoo-in for the next Golden Bachelor. I would love to see that happen.
This certainly helps, the fact that he's now available, because he wouldn't have
Right.
been if he was obviously still dating that woman. And Jonathan was really well liked by the public. Outside of a couple guys, I think all the guys were loved on Joan's season. But realistically, there's only a few that would even, you have to go pretty far. And I don't think it matters that you didn't have a hometown. And Joan never had a hometown, and she got chosen for Golden Bachelorette. We know that's more prevalent on the Bachelor and Bachelorette seasons. So I don't think it matters he didn't have a hometown. And the fact that, like I said, very well liked, very well spoken, and he
He
almost
won the
has,
prom king date,
yeah,
and then they
prom
just
king
brought him
date.
on Grant's season to do the prom king date. And I don't know, I mean, he did the strip date. I mean, they put these contestants through a lot, and so to put himself out of his comfort zone, and also his storyline, just to remind everybody, was that he felt very blindsided from his divorce. He thought everything was fine, and I think that's really interesting. I think we've all been in a relationship where you feel somewhat blindsided, where it just kind of ends and you don't have a say in it. Like, their mind's made up, and that's exactly what happened in this new relationship. It burned bright for about 3 months, and he just was kind of left like, wow, like, I just jump into things and I give it my all. And so I think that the fact that he got with her so quickly and right after filming the show tells me that he really, I sense that he really wants to find the right person, in a genuine way. But it's
Yeah.
hard, for any age dating. I mean, so I'm a big fan, and he's been through a lot in his life. So I just personally enjoyed connecting with him, and I hope, I would love to see him, whether it be in Paradise or as the next Golden Bachelor. Steve, I'm a little bit naive. I'm like, for the right reasons, and I feel like he's the same way.
Well, I think it's easier to say people of his age and people on the Golden Bachelor and the Golden Bachelorette are more for the right reasons, because you can't really can you really monetize after the show unless you're
Right.
the final couple, as opposed to a 25-year-old woman who goes on The Bachelor. She can easily monetize because she has stuff that people on Instagram want to see. Does Jonathan, did he go on Golden Bachelorette so he could monetize? No, he didn't. So it's a
No.
lot
And
easier
he's
to,
back to work, and,
yeah,
I didn't even ask him when I had him on, because it's so fresh. Like, the breakup happened a while ago, but he just was like, he felt comfortable sharing it. And it was just really nice and refreshing to have, like, a talk with him. And it's hard to navigate at this age, having come off a show. And now he told me that women are sending them their numbers, and his post went pretty viral, and it's got over like 1,000 comments. And he's like, I'm overwhelmed. Like, this was just me saying, like, hey, I'm single. It wasn't for attention. And just navigating. I know how hard it is when you come off a show and you don't. At my time, we didn't have Instagram. I wasn't allowed to have Twitter. I wasn't allowed to have Facebook, and just navigating a public breakup in a sense. So I
yeah.
was like, I'll help you out as much as I can.
Well, the other thing that happened with your podcast, or not your podcast of After Reality, but you're also doing some filling in for Rachel Levis's old podcast. What's it called? Going Rogue?
It
Ro-
was Rachel Goes Rogue, and
Rachel Goes Rogue.
now it's Rogue Energy. And
So you've gotten to
she
be a guest host, right? You're basically filling in as a
yeah.
host.
Yeah, as a host, I had Parvati Shallow on, and then I
Yeah.
kind of did a deep dive into my backstory, with Rogue Energy. I reached out to Raquel after the Vanderpump Rules finale. Just, I reach out to a lot of villains. I know you don't like Devin, and we're not like close, but just
Yeah.
because I've been there, and I've been in like the lowest low of my life and the darkest moments, and getting shit on by all alumni, and like, I mean, Jonathan is a perfect example. Like, he was so well liked, but he still needs advice. And like, who are you going to go to? So I like to think that I'm here to help people.
Yeah.
Um, So anyway, Rachel, I reached out to her and I just said, "Hey, like the way they treated her, and I don't know how you felt about it, Steve, watching that, like you're subhuman and Lala and they just attacking her. And I'm not condoning cheating. I know it's an unpopular opinion. I've already had so many trolls, Steve, just from me hosting her podcast. But so we built a friendship. When she got out of the Meadows, she reached out to me. Thank you for the message. I want to start a podcast at some point. I said, you should go for it. If you want to practice with me, I'll help you. And long story short, she did it. And now she's in a new relationship and she just walked away from her podcast. Like, because you and I both know the episodes that when we talk about The Bachelor do the best. And she was just like stuck in talking about Vanderpump Rules. And that just wasn't good for her. I commend her for walking away from something that was getting like 2 million downloads a month. Um, I hope she comes back. I'm sure the show hopes she comes back, but right now she's in a new relationship and she's just protecting her peace. So I was actually going to be her last guest. They were flying me out to LA to be a guest on her podcast, and then she called it that day. Like I was literally flying out the next day to go do her show, and they said you could still come to LA. You can use the ticket, the hotel, but Rachel's walked away from her podcast, and we don't really know what we're going to do with it yet. And I said, well, hey, if you need a pinch hitter, like I'd be happy to cover it for you. So yeah, I've been in talks with them to just kind of do some guest work until they figure out what's next for that channel, because you can't, I mean, it's iHeart, you know.
Yeah, no, I understood why she went away from it, because when she was doing the podcast talking about Vanderpump Rules, she was getting shit on for like, all right, already, like get
Right.
over it. You keep wanting to move away from Vanderpump, but all you're doing is talking about it on your podcast, which is like, I get why she did it. Like that's what people wanted to hear. They wanted to hear her opinion about everything that went on.
But
Yet
also after
it
she
couldn't make
wasn't
her
on
move
the
on.
show, they were
Yeah,
still bringing her dog into it and they were
yeah,
still talking about her. So it was her platform to take back the narrative a little bit and be like, "Hey, this is how I was treated." And I think I listened to her episodes. They were really interesting, and her publicist, who handles a lot of celebrities, is now also a guest host on it, and she covers all the Bravo stuff. But I get getting the burnout and not wanting to talk about it. I mean, that was a really traumatic thing that she went through. So kudos to her. But like, yeah, the hate mail. I mean, I just did 2 host spots and I'm getting messages like people think like they're crazy. They think that like I'm her or something. It's weird. But you know how it goes, Steve. We've talked
I
about it.
know.
We've had people that have written us for years that, you know,
Yeah,
we'll talk
they
about
don't.
that another time, but you
Yeah.
know what I mean.
Oh yeah. No, there's some people that think The Bachelor when they're watching it on Monday nights is like literally happening in real time, and they think it's not. They have no idea it's even taped in advance. And yeah, there are still people out there. You would think in 2025 there
Right.
wouldn't be. Maybe back in the early 2000s they could. No, there's still
I
people in
love Stephanie
2025.
Parker because, we all chat and all of my podcast friends, and she was like, like somebody was like coming at her for commenting on my Rogue Energy podcast. And she's like, who? Well, she's like chiming back. I'm like, you can't go there because it's, I'm like, I don't even know if they're on this planet. Like, they don't
Yeah,
even know they don't know what's going on.
you can't fight with the trolls,
No,
especially online. It's just you're never going to win, even though you are knowing that you're right and you know the facts of something.
right.
Even disputing somebody back and forth, whether it's on social media or email, it's just, look, they've got their own narrative in their head. And unless your narrative matches with theirs, they are just going to butt heads with you until either you give in and say fine or just ignore them. And, they just want to argue. And
Well, Steve, do you
unfortunately,
deal with trolls? I would love any advice for me and Stephanie. I don't even read comments or reviews and that kind of stuff. Do you deal with trolls?
not in terms of talking about what I know somebody like you and Stephanie would receive, or like Rachel Leviss would receive. Nothing like that. The stuff
Death
that I get,
threats, that kind of stuff.
no, nothing like that. I mean, maybe when the whole Demi stuff came down, but that was 4 years ago.
Oh, you
I got
did
a,
get a
I,
taste of
yeah, I got a
the
taste of it then.
overwhelming hate.
Yeah, it was like the name calling, and you're an incel, and you're a future rapist, stuff like
Oh,
that. It was just like, geez, it's a little harsh when you don't even know me and you heard one half of a story, but that was probably the closest I got to it. No one ever told me to go kill myself or anything, but it was the closest where I was literally getting called names and, like I said, some really bad things, and people said like what they thought the type of person that I was, and I was like, okay, well, you clearly don't know me. You're just saying that because somebody ran with a
Yeah.
story. So it that was the worst I ever got it. But nowadays, it's more just along the lines of if I was right or wrong on a spoiler. It's just like, and that's
You're so lucky.
whatever. Yeah. But the other thing is, honestly, and we all know it, it's just so much easier for the internet to shit on women than it is on men. It just is. Like
Absolutely.
they just love pouncing on women, and the women, if they speak out, they're looked at as trouble, or they're difficult to deal with when a woman makes her voice known. But if a man does it, it's like, look at that guy, alpha male, and it's just like,
Mhm.
okay, so it is what it is. That's the way the internet goes now. It sucks, and you just have to
It's
learn
a
how to block
dark
it all
place.
out.
I can't imagine how the girls from Grant's season and each season that it goes on and the internet gets crazier, I always think of them, and I always reach out to those people, just to offer, just like, "Hey, you're not alone."
Well, that's a great segue into what we're going to talk about, and that is Grant's
Ooh,
season. But we're not going to go over everything. There's just a couple things that I want to go over, and
yeah.
particularly what happened last episode. And
Yeah.
that was the
I have,
whole
yeah,
there
some
was
stuff
a
to
group
say.
date in Scotland, and there were 5 women on the group date. One of them was Carolina, and Carolina was like the ostracized contestant. All 4 of the women there uh, did not really care for the way she was acting. They say she makes it into the Carolina show. She makes everything about her.
She's leaning
They're
into that on her social media too, by the way.
and leaning into it on her social media, which isn't helping matters. Walking up the steps in her arms in the air, saying "I'm evil," and it's just like,
I guess
okay,
I'm crazy and
yeah,
I'm
I'm
evil.
crazy and I'm evil. It's just like, you're not going to win a lot of people over doing that. But does it make her the worst person in the world? No. And I hope she's not getting death threats. I hope she's not getting called names, even though I'm sure she is, because that's the way the internet
They
works for
all
anybody.
are. All of them are.
So my question is, like, I mean, I thought she was, to me, she just came across as a little bit exhausting, and I could see why the other women were having an issue with her, because on a 5-person group date, they were all just having fun with Grant, and she's off by a table by herself, which clearly is like, Grant, please come talk to me. And it puts Grant in a very awkward position, because if he doesn't go talk to her, the people that were watching the show are like, oh, Grant, what a dick. He's just letting her sit there while she stews and doesn't want to see if anything is wrong with her. But then if he goes to see her like he did, the other 4 women are like, great, now she's occupying his time when we're all sitting here trying to get to know Grant, have fun with him. Your season, it wasn't exactly the same, but you were a woman that was not liked by other women in the house. On your season, I don't think you ever went off into a corner by yourself during a group date to make sure Ben
Mm-mm.
came over and gave you some time. But in that situation, I'm trying to think of what the best course of action would have been for Carolina. I don't think sitting by herself and pouting to make sure Grant left the other women and came over to her was probably the best idea, but she probably also didn't want to hang out with the women either. So it's like,
Mhm.
what do you do in that situation? What was your take on how she did it, how she handled it, and how the women reacted to her? And compare it to kind of like what you had to go through when
Right.
you had a lot of women on your season that just said, "Oh, Courtney is never around us. She never wants to hang out with us. She's taking naps or whatever."
Oh, so many things. Well, so to kind of walk it back, so
By the way, did
my
you take a lot of naps? Is that true? Did you
I
sleep a lot
did.
on your season? Oh, okay.
I wasn't necessarily sleeping, but it's the only time that you can take your mic off. When you wake up, they're there, they're putting a mic on you.
Hmm.
When you pee, when you eat, everything. So, like, I just wanted, like, privacy, so I felt like if I said, like also, I was sleeping in a bed with Rachel Trueheart most of the time, and she
Yeah.
snored. I wasn't sleeping really at all, at all, and I finally got earplugs in one of the airports, and that, like, shifted things for me because we always bunked together. Um, But
Rachel
I'd be like,
Trueheart, a snorer. There we go.
sorry, Rachel. I mean, she would admit that to you, but
Okay.
we'd slept in the same bed for a long time, and I'm a light sleeper. I think it's living in LA when you're young and 20, just like, like living alone in LA, just always kind of keeping one ear open. But
Yeah.
so to kind of walk it back, I had the first, I want to say like real one-on-one date in Sonoma. That was like our first destination.
Yeah.
And KCB had the first, when we traveled that day, they gave like a night portion one-on-one date. And there's travel days and down days. But to me, I was like, okay, this is like late in the day. We've all traveled. They gave her like a theater date. They looked at photos, and then the next date, I think it was mine. I can't remember exactly if the group date happened and then no, you know what? KCB gave me the date card. Anyway, long story short, I had the first of our season, first one-on-one date where we went and, we had a picnic by the
Where you had
river.
a full day. Casey just
Yes.
had a one-on-one, but it was just at night.
It was
You
like
had
a
a
night
full day date.
portion.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not to take away from that, but she came back in and she was flying around the house and she was so excited. And
Yeah.
so because I had that first one-on-one date and I came back, like I already had a target on my back and I already felt really excited about him. Like we kissed, they let us ride together to the date, which they normally don't do. Listening to music together. We had a lot of off-camera time to like, I was like, oh wow, I really like him. So when that cocktail party came around, I just remember there was a moment, and this might be interesting to the listeners. Before the night kicked off, before the rose ceremony, they all sat me down, all the women, and Nikki was kind of the spearhead. And she said, since Courtney had a one-on-one date, we don't think she should have time with him tonight. And I was like, and this kind of reminds me of like Carolina getting this big grandioso date, and they're not parallel by any means, but I just remember thinking when they were like, "Wait, so you're telling me that because I had a one-on-one date this week that I can't use my time to talk to him again? Like I just had this great date. I want to like thank him for the date and I've had time to reflect on it." And so I was like, "Of course I'm going to go talk to them." And then it pissed all the girls off. But going to like Carolina on that date, first of all, she had a really strong date with him and connection, and then every group date that she's been on, she has been not okay. Also, Zoe as well. I mean, she was like on that one date with the Grant Bucks or whatever, and I just think it's hard when these girls feel such a strong connection so early on, and you've seen it with so many other people too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, she was a little bit of a sourpuss, but like at the same time, you can't fault her for like him stealing her. I think that was a big thing this episode. Me personally, I would have just bucked up and like tried to spend as much time with him as possible, but she probably, in my opinion, doesn't want to be around the girls, and she's just, her confidence is like zero at this point.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's just
Sorry, I just went on a
season,
tangent, but
every season it's just we see that this isn't anything new. There's always
no.
one girl that
Tiara. It
don't
reminded me of Tara
Yeah.
Lukowski, right? Remember?
Yeah.
She had the date. She was always kind of getting extra time because she fell down the stairs and then she had hypothermia.
Hypothermia. Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean,
No,
obviously Carolina's not doing stuff like that, but she is kind of getting this, in the girls' eyes, getting extra time because he's
the
having to
Carolina
like,
show is what they call it.
yes. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
making sure that she got him and, getting sad and making sure that he comes over to her and wipes her tears or whatever. But yeah, it's not easy because you're in this heightened situation. This isn't normal dating. Usually when you
And the
date
date
somebody,
looked
you're
kinda
not sharing
lame,
it with
by the
somebody.
way. They're, like, throwing the girl's, like, so frail, but she visibly looks so unhappy the whole time. And
Yeah.
they're talking about negativity. Let me tell you, there's a lot of girls that are negative or they have their periods, or I mean, there's so much going on, like, that isn't shown. I will just say that. That's even having breakfast in the morning, there's a lot of attitude. So, I wanna give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but, it's Dina, right? She really went after her.
Yeah.
But, like, Carolina had everything, like, her points were kinda what I would say to the girls, like, the same thing, like, they were like, if you're watching, you're like, "Wait, this isn't this does make sense when you put it like that." Like, he stole her, but had she not been pouting in the corner and affecting the whole group date and respect, I
Then
mean,
he wouldn't have had to steal her. She wasn't off by
exact
herself. Yeah.
exactly. So in many ways, like, it's kind of smart, like she has made what, like 2 group dates, solo dates, or cocktail
Yeah.
parties, solo time.
Yeah. Pretty much. It didn't end up working out for her in the long run because she got eliminated in the episode. But I also think it's, I brought this up earlier this week, and it's kind of, it's relevant to you and your season and also Jake Pavelka's season, because if we're going off former winners of this show, who got painted in a negative light, it was you in Vienna. And usually the lead, when the lead gets told by a bunch of other women in the house, hey, we have an issue with her or whatever, usually that person will stick around for a while, like Corinne on Nick's season or whatever. And you get to stick around for a while, but then eventually that person gets cut, because I think the lead ultimately wants to pick somebody that, one, everybody seems to get along with, that, nobody has a problem with. Same with our Crystal on Ari season, same thing. Then you want to pick somebody that everyone gets along with, and then you're thinking ahead, like, when this airs, do I want to pick somebody that the public is not going to like? And usually the answer is no. You want to pick somebody that you think the public is going to get with. And I think maybe that was probably one of the reasons that Grant didn't even let her go to the Final Four, is because he's just like,
Well,
all
and
right.
Dina made a good case, and they didn't show everything that was talked about, but she did handle it pretty well. I just think as a contestant, like, I never used my time with Ben to talk about the other women at all. At all. I never did. And I just think that it's a bad look when somebody rattles your cage that much to, like, go to the lead and do that, because it just, to me, reeks
never
of
works.
insecure. It never works, but in this case it did, and that's what I think is kind of interesting. But, like, to me, it reeks of insecurity, and, like, why are you, like, how are you, like you said, like, how are you navigating getting along with people? Ben, for example, did have a hard time with how the show aired, but he saw me with the girls interacting on group dates. Like, I wasn't running around, like, I wasn't being negative, I wasn't pouting, I would get along with people when we were filming. I wasn't mean to them off camera, but I did stick to myself a lot. And I remember he told me once, like, I would ask the girls, like, "What is it about her?" And he's like, "They didn't have, like, anything to say." So I think each case,
Other than you keep to yourself. And
right, it's case by case, or we just don't like her. But I think it goes back to having that first date and, like, the target on your back. And there's so much I could say about this. I think Carolina's really stunning and really pretty and very confident. And even, like, the way she's reacting to Dina is very, like she's not really taking the bait until we see her, probably a little boozy, walk up the stairs to get away. But, like, she's not engaging in that. And that's very smart, because I mean, she could have exploded, right?
And she will be 1000% part of the first group that's down on the beach in Paradise.
Don't you think?
For sure. Oh, yeah. She's going to be on Paradise. Why wouldn't she be? Unless she just doesn't want to do it. I'm saying, as the show, you absolutely cast Carolina on Paradise.
Are you hearing any rumblings so far? Like, have you heard if there's going to be golden contestants down there?
There's going to be I don't know if they're going to be golden contestants, like, going down there to date each other. I just know they're going to incorporate the golden people, because they do every time. I mean, when we were watching Jen's season of The Bachelorette, we had the golden appearances. When we saw Grant's prom date, they invited the 4 golden bachelorette guys. They're going to incorporate them. They do for everything. I'm sure when they tape the Women Tell All this weekend, there will be some sort of golden bachelor, golden bachelorette presence at that taping this weekend. So, yeah. But
Wait, what
I'm
are they
sure
taping this weekend? What is it?
Women Tell All.
Oh, they are? Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Ooh, the claws are going to come out. Well, and I thought it was interesting, going back to this week's episode, that Carolina pulled Dina, like, before
the rose ceremony.
It just seemed like there was something missing there. Like, did they talk off camera? Was she like, "Hey, I went to him"? Like, it just seemed very out of left field to me. Like, Carolina knew she was going home, or
I had someone suggest to me that Carolina said that to Dina because Carolina was so confident that she was staying and Dina was going home. So she was basically like, "Hey, if we don't see each other again, see you later." But without me saying it, like, I know I'm getting here and you're not. And it ended up being the other way around.
After this,
yeah. And it ended up being the other way around, because I mean, Carolina did say in her walkout, or maybe in an ITM, that she felt blindsided. But again, so did the other 2 girls. Serafina felt she got blindsided, and the other one that got eliminated felt she got blindsided. So, yeah, I'm sure it was more of Carolina saying, hey, let's just bury the hatchet. But the deep-rooted thing behind it was probably, hey, I know I'm staying and you're probably going. So I just want to clear the air and make sure we're cool. And then all of a sudden, oh, shit, Dina's staying over me. Boy, do I look dumb.
Has there been drama online? I feel like I saw something that they were like a Twitter or like a Twitter
There were some passive
TikTok.
aggressive. TikToks going back and forth between Dina and Carolina. So I'm
Really?
sure this weekend when they tape the Women Tell All, look, outside, I mean, Carolina's the only one seemingly that has any sort of drama this season. So I'm guessing the
The
same
girls do
four
not
women.
like her.
Yeah,
But
I'm
it
guessing
was
the same
Zoe.
four women it was Zoe in the beginning because she kept stealing him away. But I'm guessing it's going to be the same four women that were on that group date: Alex, Dina, Serafina, and I'm blanking on the other person that were on that date that are going to call Carolina out for her behavior. I mean, we already know what's coming at the Women Tell All. It's going to be Carolina versus the other women in the house, and she's going to have to defend herself yet again. So,
Well, hopefully Grant kind of sticks up for her. We'll see because you know that they're going to get on the couch together and
yeah,
talk. But I mean, we shall see. I This season's been a little bit lackluster for me. I've like enjoyed seeing Scotland, um, but I'm just like they're not doing a golden. I'm sorry, they're not doing. I get them confused. They're not doing a Bachelorette season this summer. So it's like, who's
yeah.
going to Paradise? Like, where's the
Oh,
cast coming?
they got plenty. They're going to have
You think?
Joey's women didn't get a Paradise last year. Jen's men and Grant's women. I mean, that's 3 seasons that haven't
Right.
gotten a
Oh, because they
Paradise
didn't do it
season.
last.
They
Yes,
didn't
that
do
makes
Paradise
sense.
last year. So that's three casts to choose from. It's going to be mostly, I mean, you could pretty much already name the women from Grant's season that are going to be on Paradise. It's going to be
I
everybody.
kinda hope Chloe's down there. I liked
Oh, I'm sure she would
Chloe.
be. Absolutely, she'll be there. I can't see why she wouldn't be. She'll be there. Alex will be there. Dina will be
Mhm.
there. Carolina will be there. They're all, we pretty much know it's going to be mostly this cast. And then you got Jen's men outside of Devin, because Devin is now, I don't know if he has a girlfriend,
They're
but
together. I saw
yeah.
he's posted about her.
Okay. He has posted about her. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
um, has he tagged her? Do people know who she is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
He
he
has
tagged
tagged her.
her. He seems happy with her and is just
Yeah.
doing his own thing. He's
I
definitely
don't think
not
they would bring
going
him,
down there.
even if he was single. I don't think they would have brought him down just because of the everything that came out after the show. It just, they don't want to deal with that because the second they bring him down to Paradise, the show now has to answer, wait a second, maybe you didn't know about it the first time around that this guy once had a restraining order out against him in college, but now that you do and you're still putting him on your show, like there's no way they would have done that. They can get away with it one time. You can't get away with it a second time. So here's the other thing I want to talk about this, and we're going to move on from Grant season. Did you see, and I haven't watched it yet. I wanted to watch it today, but I'm not going to get around to it because I got to watch Survivor tonight. But did you see who Call Her Daddy has on her podcast today? Did you see that?
I didn't know. Who?
Monica Lewinsky.
No.
Yeah, she got to sit down with Monica Lewinsky. Now, look, Monica Lewinsky, I believe, wrote a book in the past, and she's
She
definitely done
did.
interviews. She's definitely done interviews in the past, but to sit down and do an hour podcast, I can't wait to listen to it. And just, I've always been fascinated by this whole thing. It's just, when you think about it,
Oh my
it is
gosh.
absolutely amazing that a 22-year-old intern, and she didn't just give the guy a blowjob. Like, she had an affair with a 49-year-old man who happened to be the president of the United States. Like, it was, year 2000. So this was the early advent of the internet.
Mhm.
But the fact that a 22-year-old intern was having an affair with the president of the United States is still kind of mind-boggling to me.
Did
And
you watch that documentary or I'm sorry, the show about her? It was so good. What was it called? It might have just been called Monica.
yeah, it was either called Monica or Lewinsky or something like that. I don't remember if I saw it, but I just remember obviously
It
the
was called
backlash.
Impeachment: American Crime Story.
Okay.
Oh, it was so good. If you haven't seen it, it's a must.
I just remember, it's just crazy to think that This guy's the leader of the free world, and he has an affair with a 22-year-old intern, and who took 1,000 times more shit for that relationship? She did. And it's just amazing. Like, wait a second. Shouldn't this guy who's in a position of power, totally taking advantage of a girl making her way up in the world as a 22-year-old intern in DC, and yet America called her every name in the book? And it's just kind of the way, again, stuff we've talked about numerous times. This is kind of the way the media was able to get what the media was able to get away with in the early 2000s. It was always the women's fault, the woman's fault. And it's just, I'm interested in listening to it. I don't think I'll find out anything new from Monica Lewinsky, but I do want to hear what she has to say about everything. Maybe she goes into
That's
detail
a
about.
good get. I think she will go into detail. I mean, there was the whole thing about the proof that she had, and there was a
Yeah.
sample on her jacket or her dress or
Yeah.
something, and
Yeah.
how she proved it. And that you should I don't know if you've seen it yet, but you should watch that, in the impeachment one I was telling you about. It's
Yeah.
so good. It's so binge worthy. I can't wait to listen to that too. I'm super interested. Also,
Yeah.
you would think that she has like some crazy NDA. Like,
I mean, it was 25 years ago.
right. Maybe that expired.
I got to believe that thing's over. And she wrote a book. Like, she's already talked about. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think I'm going to learn anything new in this interview, because it's not like Monica Lewinsky has kept her mouth shut for 25 years. She's done numerous interviews, but I don't think she's ever done a sit down hour podcast. And any interview that she does was probably heavily edited by like the news places, ABC and 2020. I'm sure they did interviews, like the impeachment show, that show that you said they did. She was interviewed for that, I'm assuming, right? And she talked about things. So it's just interesting to listen to somebody in this position kind of talk about it.
I'm looking
And
forward to that. Let me know when it comes out.
it's
Is it
already out.
coming out? Oh, it's already
Yeah.
out?
Came out today. Yeah.
Oh, I know what I'm listening to when I go to sleep.
Yeah, it's on Call Her Daddy's YouTube channel. And yeah, I think it's just amazing to think, like, how did that even, like, you couldn't get away with that in the age of social media now. Like, how did that even happen? Do you imagine how many, how many people enabled President Clinton at that time to get away with that? How many people knew? Like, I don't think you could just walk into the president's Oval Office as a 22-year-old intern by yourself with nobody else in there. So obviously people knew he was having this affair. They were like, okay, at 8:30, why don't you come around the corner? I'll let you in. Like, it had to be a lot of going on, and a lot of, like I said, a lot of enablers for Clinton to have this going on. Yeah.
I hope she goes into that, because let's be honest, that's what people are going to want to hear the most about. And I can't believe Hillary stayed with them all that. I mean,
yeah. And then the fact that it wasn't like this was a rumored affair, or it wasn't like, oh, he kissed an intern
I did not
inappropriately.
have sexual relations with that woman.
It's not like it was that. It was an affair. Like, she was continuously seeing the president. If it was a one-time thing, it's like, okay, he got away with it. It was a 2-month, 3-month affair where he was sleeping with a woman 27 years his junior, and he was the leader of the free world. Like, it's still, I still kind of just like cannot believe this happened. But I also know that men in a position of power kind of are ruled by sex. I mean, it's kind of the way it works in this world.
I mean, look at P. Diddy. I mean, holy moly, he lost the keys to New York City. I could go on and on about that. I just finished watching The Downfall of Diddy. You know, I love true crime. I mean, that kind of stuff. But he's in a world of hurt. And now, like you were saying though, back then it was so wild. But I mean, now what's so crazy. I know a lot of people are getting caught from DNA and the screen grabs and this. We're in the wild, wild west for sure.
You like the true crime shows. Have you watched the Gabby Petito one yet, or no?
I did.
You did?
I did. And it wasn't the first thing that I was going for, but I followed that. I think America did when it came out. And I mean, it was like the search for this guy and search for her for a while. It was like all over, every mainstream media. And it was just, so you could go to her Instagram and see this young girl who was like trying to do her van life and so full of life, who was missing, then to finding her. And then the guy goes missing. I mean, I guess I would say this, like, I was like, we kinda know how it ended, and I was like, "Am I gonna watch this and, like, learn something new or, like, feel good?" But, like, the way they put the show together and the way that they ended it, you learn a lot more that wasn't shown on the mainstream
Mm.
media, and I think, talking about, like, where the system failed her when she got pulled over in Utah and like, seeing how the cops, like, took the guy's side, it's really interesting, and you don't leave I mean, you I guess my point is like, you kinda know how the story is gonna end, right? It's like watching Titanic, like, how many times are we gonna watch Titanic? Like, we know how the story ends, it's very heavy, it's very sad, but it was, really well done.
Everybody that has said it, that I've seen comment about it online, has said that the Laundrie family, him and his parents, are just like the worst humans ever. Like, the
Yeah.
parents played a major
Major
role, and
role.
nobody
Mhm.
spoke up. Like,
Yep.
wasn't she missing for so many amount of days and nobody bothered to say anything?
It was like 21 days,
Yeah.
and I mean, just, like, the way that they and the thing I love about true crime nowadays is, this is something that actually, I'm not ready to share it yet, but I've always been fascinated with true crime. I love Dateline in 2020, and, back in the day when somebody went missing, you didn't have cell phone towers and all this data and DNA, and now it's just so interesting to see, like, how quickly they can get to somebody and, like, get into your phone and tap emails and all this kinda stuff, but, yeah, that guy was, they found the letter and all that kinda stuff, and, he committed suicide and wrote a he still wasn't honest in his, like, final note either, so
So they're not the documentary didn't try and stray you into thinking something else happened, right? It's clear that
no,
he
he
killed her.
admitted it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he admitted it, and so but it was, like, so at the end, it's like she's like they're showing her, like, on the beach, and her family was, like, so lovely throughout it, and, like, it's just I think I would recommend watching that. I also watched Scamanda, which is,
Mm,
uh, Alana turned me on to. It's also a podcast that you can listen to. It's
yeah.
so good.
And isn't the big problem that people have with the documentary, or right now post documentary, is that the parents are just basically walking around scot free. Nothing has happened to them,
Nope,
right? And people
nothing's
think that they
happened.
should be charged with something. And I just don't even know at this point if they can. Or did you get any sense from the documentary that something can or will happen to the parents in the future,
Mm-mm.
or no?
No, I don't think
Mm,
so. They're just off doing their own thing. Yeah.
mm.
Yeah, nothing, but, like, they were there yeah, no. There was definitely no look into that. They were just uncooperative, and they could have made a huge I mean, there was a letter that was found that was kind of interesting, and it said, "Burn after reading," and it was a letter to the son, and it was basically like, "I will do anything for you." So when after she went missing, he went on this, like, long hike, and he called his mom, and that was, like, stuff that wasn't shown in the mainstream media, and he talked to her for about an hour, and basically, right after that call ended, so this is before he left where he had murdered her, they c his mom called an attorney and hired an attorney.
Mm.
So, he probably called his mom and told her what had happened, and she told him what to do. So, they had hands in it for sure.
Wasn't didn't he wasn't she found dead in, like,
It was, like, near I wanna say Montana? Was it Montana?
yeah,
Montana.
and he was from, didn't they live in Florida? Like, they were
In Florida.
traveling. Yeah,
They were
so
traveling in her van that she owned,
yeah,
and exactly, and, like, also, it was interesting to see, like, the TikTok people and, like, people that were in the van life and traveling, like, how they pieced it together. People had content of them being there and, like, seeing the van, and it was,
yeah.
like, this vast area. It was, like, 20 miles of area where they had, like, her last cell phone pinged. So, it was interesting to see how many people came together and to crack the case to find her. So I would highly recommend it. It's not like the most uplifting, but it's
Yeah.
interesting, especially if you followed the story live like I did. And like now she has like these followers and there's foundations and stuff like that. But
What were they
yeah,
saying his motive was? What
um,
was the reason he did it? Did he say in his letter, or what are people saying online? Because I remember following it, but I forgot what I was reading back then about why he did this. What
So
was the
he
reason?
was clearly abusive towards her. And that was like when they got pulled over, it was like a call to the police that was like, hey, I just was like, in Utah, I just saw this guy slapping his girlfriend. And then the
Mm.
cops pulled him over and she's just like hysterical. They split them up. And so he was abusive towards her. And it just seemed like a very unhealthy relationship. They were engaged. And in his letter, he said that she fell and hurt herself when they were crossing a river and that she was like in so much pain that he put her out of her misery and that that's what she wanted. Sorry to get a little dark,
Yeah.
but that he couldn't go on living without her. And that's why he, ultimately, took his life or whatnot. But I don't think there was a motive. I think it was an abusive relationship, and she had called her ex-boyfriend. That's in the documentary as well, basically saying like, "I want out of this. Like I'm trying to, like she was like trapped. Like she's like, I'm trying to figure out a way to get out of this." And the last video shown of her, of him and her, was like from a parking lot, and he could tell he's visibly upset. He like slams the door. The guy was just very volatile. So yeah, his parents, I mean, that's just horrible. And they wouldn't
Yeah.
respond to her parents. I mean, who does that?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that story captivated America at the time, and then now this documentary just came out recently. So yeah, everyone
Yeah.
can check that out. Gabby Petito's story. But anyway, Courtney, thank you so much for coming on. Really
Sorry, I feel
appreciate
like
it.
we need to end on a lighter note.
Oh no,
Take
we're
a
fine. uh, go see if the kids are riding bikes in the kitchen.
What time is
Take a
it?
take a
Oh.
video and send it to me if they are, because I
Oh,
want to see it.
I sure will. And enjoy some of those Girl Scout cookies for me.
Yeah, no, that's my new cheat right now. But I'm almost done. So once I'm done with them, then no more cheat snacks, because then
Question, do you
I'm not going to
keep
buy
your
more.
Thin Mints in the freezer?
No, but I keep them in the refrigerator.
Okay.
Yeah. Some people keep them in the freezer. I don't know why. I just put them in the refrigerator. I just like them cold. They don't need to be frozen, but they need to be cold. Yeah.
Absolutely. My kids ate
Yeah.
all the Thin Mints, so they spared me, but
All
we've
I
been
like is the Thin Mints and the Do-si-Dos. Those are my two favorites. The Do-si-Dos are just the peanut butter, just
mm,
the cookie and then peanut butter in the middle. That's it. I know there's other ones, the tag-alongs and
yes.
those are pretty good, but the only ones I got this time around, and I ordered it through my friend whose daughter is in Girl Scouts. I ordered it online, was just Thin Mints and Do-si-Dos, and I'm fine with that. So
Good for
so
you.
there.
Support the troops. They're out
We
there.
we ended on a good note. Girl
Yes.
Scout cookies.
Yes.
Anyway,
All right, Steve.
thanks
Thanks
again,
for
Courtney.
having me on.
We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Adios.